when I got my diagnosis of, originally it was just psoriasis. I went to see the doctor for like 3 minutes. They saw me, he diagnosed me with psoriasis. So the skin would clear, but then it would come back even worse. And then a few months or a year after that, my joints began to hurt. So it was psoriatic arthritis. If I went the regular course, as one of my friends did, who was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, I would have been disabled and bankrupt by now. Fortunate for me that I have this rebellious nature, I'm willing to experiment. I started working with some really interesting doctors, as you know. I started with Dr. Rick Lynchitz. He was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer 2 years before I met him. So and he started searching the world for anything that could help him alleviate this terminal diagnosis. He helped me resolve the arthritis part of my diagnosis in 90 days. So it was a miracle. It was a miracle.
Welcome to the CoachMD Podcast. I'm Dr. Charles Glassman, bringing you 3 decades of experience as a physician and a coach. Join us as we navigate the maze of medical advice with real-life stories, empowering you to take charge of your health. In our That Happens segment, guests share transformative experiences, reminding us that we're all human and not just patients. So get ready for a journey into healthcare reimagined, where empowerment and discovery pave the way. Hey, it's Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. In my over 30 years of medical practice, I made it my goal to help people create strong minds, healthy bodies, and unshakable spirits. And because of that, I started the CoachMD podcast, because people really want to be guided, but they can't always turn to their doctor. And I want to talk to people who've actually taken their health in their own hands, and sometimes despite their doctor's recommendations, because we are so, so many doctors have blinders on our eyes, because we take what the medical journals tell us, what the pharmaceutical industry tells us, what our medical school professors have told us, and that doesn't always make sense. It always doesn't to us personally. And that's why I always encouraged my patients to share with me what they found on the internet, because people have become experts in themselves. If they have a condition, they're an expert in themselves. They're much more of an expert than I am, because they have done the work. And so many times I joke around that I can be, there's another language out there, and I could be a translator for that language. And that language is the language of a medical doctor. And the translation, when the medical language tells you, oh, those things don't work, or those things are hocus pocus, what the interpretation, the translation of that is, I don't know anything about it. I haven't done the research. But it's the own ego of the doctor to stand in the way. And unfortunately, it's to the detriment of our patients. And so my guest today has all over the spectrum of what I think is so vital for true delivery of healthcare and well care. And that's somebody who not only has had a medical condition himself that he's had to find alternative ways of dealing with it, because the allopathic Western way just wasn't working for him. And not only has he done that, he's actually put together organizations and conventions and meetings with doctors to share their wisdom, doctors from all different areas and expertise. And now he's the founder of the Science for Human Optimization. And that's because we have the ability to live truly healthy, full, well, satisfying lives. So thank you, Alex Lubarski, for coming on today. I've been looking so forward to talking with you, and it's a privilege and honor to have you on my broadcast today.
Dr. Charles, thank you so much. I've known you for many years. I'm a big fan, and I'm very honored to be here with you today.
Yeah, thank you. So, you've had you have a new book that's going to be coming out, which I read over the last few days, and you have such a remarkable story. And I think I'd like you to share that with a little bit of that with us. And what I mean by that is not the medical, but the personal, because so much of our life as adults goes back to childhood. And not only emotionally, but also the habits that we learn and the way we we interact with people, our interpersonal relationships. So take us back, Alex, to where you grew up and how you came to the United States.
Wow, that's a long story, but
I
okay.
know.
So I was born in the Soviet Union in 1968, and I grew up there pretty much towards the end of the 70s. We left in 1979 to the United States through Vienna, Italy, and then we ended up living in New York. I've been here since. So I've experienced the world that doesn't exist anymore, and I got to see what it's like for people to live in a society that's focused on an ideology of Marxism that America tends to entertain and court these days, which I find infuriating and upsetting, confusing.
Yes.
So I've seen the destruction of this ideology of the human soul, really, because God said that those without vision will perish, and the people in the Soviet Union had no vision, so they were perishing. There was a lot of alcohol consumption. There was a lot of abuse, and people were angry and they were frustrated because they had nothing to look forward to. It was a very grim experience, and everybody worked for the government, and the salary that was set for the majority of the people would not allow them to survive. So unless you were able to finagle the system somehow, somewhere, on a smaller level or a higher level, then you would basically starve to death along with your family. So when I came to the United States, I was involved. I worked with my dad in the taxi business on the west side of Manhattan. So from the age of 13, pretty much, I was an apprentice. And I grew up in some really tough areas with some really tough people. So I grew up very, very fast.
Yeah.
At the age of, when I was just before I turned 16, my father was arrested for bribery, and he ended up serving 2 to 5 years in prison. I ended up serving my own time of running his business for 3 years. So there were 60 employees. There were 24 yellow cabs, two tow trucks, auto body shop, and hundreds of customers. So from the age of 16, I was in that shop. I remember just standing there trying to figure out how to talk to people, how to sell them things, how to deal with them. And there were some really rough characters. But, I found my way. And I think that experience made me a little tougher and a little more resilient and a little more rebellious than the average person. So that when I got my diagnosis of, originally it was just psoriasis. I went to see the doctor for like 3 minutes. They saw me. He diagnosed me with psoriasis. So I did what he said. He gave me the steroid cream. I put it on, but the skin would clear, but then it would come back even worse. And then a few months or a year after that, my joints began to hurt. So it was psoriatic arthritis. That was the actual diagnosis. And, if I went the regular course, as one of my friends did, who was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, I would have been disabled and bankrupt by now. So I guess it's fortunate for me that I have this rebellious nature, and I'm willing to experiment and push the envelope. So I started working with some really interesting doctors, as you know. I started with Dr. Rick Lynchitz. He was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer 2 years before I met him. So he was a board certified in 4 different things. And he started searching the world for anything that could help him alleviate this terminal diagnosis. And at the same time, he retired from his pain management practice, which was one of the largest in the country. And he opened this little tiny office where he was seeing just his family and friends and, trying to help them. And so I started working with him. I helped him build this multi-million-dollar practice. And at the same time, he helped me resolve the arthritis part of my diagnosis in 90 days. So it was a miracle. It was a miracle. And so I started organizing conferences where we would have some of the top doctors and celebrity activists. And so I love that. I love that business. We had Suzanne Summers. We had Carol Alt, we had Mark Hyman, you name it, we've had them pretty much.
Yeah.
And with thousands of people attend these events, I love being part of that. I didn't want to become a doctor. I was just kind of raising a little mayhem, and I was bringing all these great minds together. I was learning from them. I was trying a lot of the different therapies and approaches and things. And so this has been a tremendous learning experience. And what I discovered in all these years is that what's missing is a model that would provide a system of health care that's more proactive, that's more personalized, that's more ongoing, where you have somebody that knows you from your genetics out and who can make recommendations on a regular basis to optimize your body so that you can circumvent a lot of these chronic illnesses. They sold the system that's basically a socialized system of healthcare in America.
Mm-hmm.
So in socialism, everybody's equal, but at the level of poverty.
Yes, that was a key point in your book that I loved. Yeah, when you said that, but you continue. Yes.
Yeah, so they're all equal at the level of poverty. In our healthcare system, we're all equal at the level of obesity.
Yeah.
So everybody's sick, everybody's fat, everybody's developing they're 10 years before some kind of a catastrophic health problem. So if I can catch them 10 years before they're diagnosed, identify the missing reasons why they would be diagnosed, whether it's genetic, whether it's the deficiency, whether it's toxicity, whether it's digestive biome, optimize all these things and help them circumvent a lot of these problems. Yeah. So here I am.
Yes. Yeah. I loved your story, Alex. Yeah, it's very interesting that let me not but it's seductive actually to have the government take care of you, to have people take care of you. And I always have this feeling that, and people don't like to hear me say this, doctors don't like to hear me say this, but I was a doctor in clinical practice. I haven't practiced now for almost 5 years, but I was in clinical practice for over 30 years. And I never liked to take care of people. That's not, I don't want to take care of people. That's not my job to take care of people. What my job is, and you mentioned this in your book about what doctor really means, it's teacher. You want to teach people and give them the information to empower them to be able to take care of themselves. And that's very holistic. But it's against the paradigm of go to the doctor, get a pill, get a quick fix, and be on it forever. And we see that happening with the new medications now for obesity, the GLP-1 agonists. And yeah, I understand that some people have struggled with this, but it's totally removing the responsibility. Now, they can be used, don't get me wrong, in the proper setting with the proper guidance. If somebody is going to adopt a healthy lifestyle and exercise plan and diet and do all of that, and then come off of the medication, great. But we're not doing this. Most of the doctors don't have the time for that. Most of the pharmaceutical companies don't want you to come off of the medication. And it's kind of like bariatric surgery. I don't know what your experience is, Alex, but with my experience, I would say in my practice, I probably had, I don't know, 12 to 24 patients over the years who went for bariatric surgery. All of them, except for one that I remember, gained the weight back and more. So unless you deal with the holistic approach, it's not going to work. I mean, you agree with that? I mean,
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I think we've been sold this idea that our health belongs to somebody else, some expert out there.
Yeah.
And this needs to be paid for by some other expert out there. So, but that we know that that's not true. And
yeah. I think that the idea that we have to have someone take care of us is so destructive to, and that's the doctor-patient relationship. I got out of that a lot in 2002. I became one of the first doctors in the country to start a concierge practice, and that now they're all over the place. But when the first few years of that practice, it felt like I was doing the same old, but just with less patients. And so 3 years into that practice, I kind of broke off on my own from the company that helped us start it. And I started really getting to know my patients better and talking with them. And as you said, listening to other experts, I want my patients to be experts in their own conditions. I want them to come to me with with reams and reams of information, which you go to a doctor now, forget, you bring in any type, they're going to be like, whoa, where are you coming from? Stay away from me. I don't have time for that. But that's what you really want. And if you could tell us a little bit about your relationship with the doctor who helped you get over the arthritis part of the psoriasis, in 90 days, I think you said. If you could tell me some of the modalities, and I want to just say this, that a lot of people will poo-poo outside the box treatments. So where the rubber meets the road for me, my bottom line, my benchmark is, does it work? Period. I don't care. And does it, obviously doesn't hurt you, but if it doesn't hurt you and it works, don't tell me the mechanisms or if it's, it's not supposed to do that or whatever. If it works, and obviously what he did worked for you. So if you could share a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, isn't it interesting that we even have to have a conversation about this way of looking at out of the box? I mean, truly, medicine is an art.
Yeah.
At some point, they created this box, and then they spent $60 billion a year convincing the public through their commercials and their public announcements and everything else that going outside that box is dangerous and you should only stay in the box. But anything else I do in my life, I'm always out of the box.
Yeah, me too.
I look for the best. I look for the best, and I don't mind paying for the best.
Mm-hmm.
But in healthcare, somehow we try to get it on the cheap and for free. And who else is going to pay for it? It's just dumb. So it got very annoying very quickly. And I just think that the majority of the people aren't going to change their mind. It's like, you got to walk around in the desert for 40 years and new generations got to come up who see things differently. I think my children in that generation look at healthcare and their health very differently than we did.
Yeah.
So when I first started working with Dr. Lynch's, I remember this conversation. We were in his office. I said, Rick, look, let's. I said, when I first met him, Dr. Lynch's, call me Rick. I said, okay, Rick. I always felt very uncomfortable about that, but he's just such a figure. He needed some kind of a title.
Yeah.
But so we started talking. I said, look, I'm going to help you market your practice, but what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to help optimize my body, and I'm going to use that experience as a selling point. So he said, okay. And so he did a whole bunch of blood tests. I remember some of them were over $1,000 at the time. They were very thorough. They weren't covered by health insurance. My wife and I had a very excellent health insurance, but nothing was covered pretty much because health insurance covers the well-established disease states. So if you have cancer, they'll do a blood test for that specific cancer. Mm-hmm. They won't do a blood test to check your vitamin levels. They're not interested in that. That's outside the scope of medical necessity. So I said, look, I found in my life that if I want the best, I have to spend money for it, and if I want results, I have to make an investment. So I started spending money. I spent $1,000 for some blood work. I spent a whole bunch of $1,000s of supplements, detoxification programs, chelation programs. So when we did all his testing, I had very high levels of mercury and heavy metals. Mm. I was depleted in a lot of vitamins and minerals. Vitamin D was under 20 nanograms per milliliter. From what I recall, let's see. I gained a lot of weight. I was eating well, but not perfect. Well, compared to the standard American, but not perfect. And so he started working with me. So he started putting me on the supplement line. He put me on this detoxification protocol. By then, I could barely walk. I stopped running because my hips hurt so bad. So he goes, you got to get back into exercise, get back into the gym. And, one step at a time. And for 90 days, nothing changed. I was basically a cripple. I was hobbling around everywhere I went. And then one fine, beautiful day just clicked and disappeared. I mean, disappeared. It's been 20 years. I mean, what do you call that?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
A miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is, I always like to call upon spontaneous remissions of disease or cancer, for instance, right? So the doctors, if they're faced with that, they'll say, you go to a rheumatologist and tell them that story, and they'll say, oh yeah, that happens. Or you'll go to a oncologist and the lung cancer went away, whatever. Oh, that happens. Oh, really? If it happens, I want to know why it happens and why aren't you studying that? Instead of the New England Journal talking about some of the things now that they're talking about, I don't even go there, but the headlines on some of their opinions and their studies, you're more concerned about something that was going on 100 years ago and things that were happening in our society that you called that were bad 100 years ago and say they're happening now, and then saying things about anyway, I don't want to go there, but I'm interested in what is curing these people, these spontaneous remissions, or what were some of the supplements you were taking and the chelation and getting rid of that worked for you. Why you have people on these disease modifying agents that are causing cancer? So, these medications which block TNF alpha, which is an important cytokine to our immune system, and you're blocking that immune response by blocking that with these disease modifying agents. And I saw it in my practice, people getting cancer on Humira, on some of these other disease modifying agents. And I'm like you, I would have never gone on one of those. And I'm not giving medical advice here and telling you that that's what you should do right now, but you should seek out other alternatives, such as Alex did, right? I mean, it worked for you. And you said 20 or so years later, you're still fine.
Well, it took me a minute to figure out that, the only time we go see a doctor in this paradigm is once we already develop some kind of symptomatology. And a lot of men will resist going to see a doctor no matter what. They'll do everything else but go see a doctor. And I think in the back of our mind, and that subconscious reptilian brain, we kind of understand that when you go to see a doctor, they're going to be looking to find something. Like my mom, she's 75 now. She developed this cough for like a year. And like a few weeks into it, I go, Mom, maybe you go see a doctor. No, they're going to find something. I said, well, isn't that the goal, that they're going to find something? Yeah. But, there's finding something and then there's finding something.
Right.
If you have some kind of deficiency, if you need to get rid of some kind of a bug, and either do it with supplements or even a medication, fine. But if you're looking for some kind of a thing that you can manage with medication, surgery, hospitalization, bill my insurance company for $150,000, I'm not interested in that kind of a program. I have zero interest.
Right. Yeah. So I tell the story when I was in college. I was pre-med and I was on the track when I was a junior that I passed the pre-med committee, so that they were going to support me, my application. So we did this preceptorship at Rochester General Hospital in Rochester, New York, and we would rotate through all the different departments. And so I would always be the guinea pig, right? I always volunteer. So the first one was the the pulmonary department. So I volunteered for spirometry. So they did the spirometry on me, and then now I was a healthy 19, 20-year-old, whatever. They're looking at me like funny. Like, what are you looking at me for? Are you feeling all right? Yeah, I feel great. Well, your spirometry is really abnormal. Oh God, that's like, don't look for things, right?
You don't want
Okay,
to have you don't want to have a bad spirometry. That's like
right.
of all things. I never heard.
Exactly. That was like 40 years ago, right? So then I volunteer for the neurology, and they're doing EMGs on me and nerve conduction testing. They look at me. Are you okay? Do you have any weakness in your arm? Like, they're finding all this stuff. And so
Yeah.
it's like, I didn't, that's the kind of thing. I grew up, my mother, rest in peace. I loved her. I love her even in her death, but she was a very over concerned Jewish mother. Okay. And so I have this programming, or I did, not, I don't anymore, thank goodness. But if there was a problem, I go running to my parents, mainly.
Slight hypochondria.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so I remember I told her this. I don't think I might have got my lungs checked out too, but I remember going to a neurologist and them doing an EEG on me to say whatever. This was, I don't know what, it was ridiculous. But that also contributed to my white coat syndrome, which I developed as a medical student and plagued me it didn't plague me. I mean, I didn't bother me. I mean, I didn't go on medication or anything, but I'm actually glad that happened to me, because when you talk about the reptilian brain, I wrote a book in 2008, 2009 called Brain Drain, not as opposed to Grain Drain, as everybody, right. Grain Brain, not Grain Brain, but he has in his book a chapter, Brain Drain. But it was talking about really my experience and how I looked at how our brain controls our body and how our reptilian brain is in control, but we have our primitive animalistic, uh, um, what I call automatic brain, or reptilian brain, if you will. And then we have our divine nature, which is inspired by our higher consciousness. I believe our connection with God and the Almighty, and that's how we can have the power when we tap into that. When people talk about mind body medicine, that's my feeling, is that that's the mind that's taking control, because yogis and those who can control their brain, okay, their brain function, their automatic brain, using their mind. So when Herbert Benson studied the monks in the Himalayas, and they were able to control their body temperature just with mind control, they're taking over the automatic processes of our brain with their mind, their higher mind. So because you talked a lot about stress in your book, and how that might have, in your idea, that might have triggered some of the autoimmune type reaction that your body had, causing that arthritic. Do you have any thoughts about that, or how you used, and how obviously your attitude was, let's take care of this. That's a very positive, assertive type of control that one needs in order to be healthy, is to be assertive rather than aggressive or passive. So can you, like, back then when you were dealing with this, how do you think stress might have played? What did you do about that, or how did that take shape?
Well, in my mind, there's a bunch of links to a chain. Your digestive function, your vitamin mineral deficiency or optimization, your nutrition, your lifestyle. And when the chain is strong, it can handle a lot of stress, even if you don't know how to process it properly. But if it's weak anywhere, and you receive this blow of death of somebody you love, betrayal, all these kind of very heavy emotional things, that can rip the chain. So I think stress plays a big part in damaging the human body, because I mean, we weren't designed to be under this much stress all the time.
Right.
And we can't get out of this wound up kind of a place that we're in.
Yeah.
And so that I was very clear, because it was just such a, it was correlated so close together. Like the stressful event happened, and right after I developed this problem.
Mm.
So it definitely pushed me over the edge. I might have developed it at some point later, but this stressful event definitely broke something and caused it.
Yeah. Well, when I wrote my book, I didn't know anything about John Sarno. And are you familiar with John Sarno and his work?
He's the protein guy, isn't he? Justin?
No, yeah. So no, John Sarno. Boy, I feel privileged that I'm going to educate you, because you joked around in your book about you not disappointing your mother that you're not really a doctor. But I have to say to my audience, Alex is kind of a doctor, honestly. He does, just because when you're around all this information, you learn so much. And so anyway, so I'll just tell you a little bit about John Sarno. And I knew nothing about John Sarno until I wrote my book, and people would tell me about him. And basically, John Sarno was a physiatrist at Rusk Institute in New York for many years. He died a few years ago at 94. But he broke away from the paradigm of that pain management was moving into.
Back pain. He wrote a book
Back
on
pain, exactly.
No, I know of him.
There
yeah.
you go. Yes, right. So he moved away from the paradigm of, you have back pain, it's structural. There's a structural reason for it. And it's kind of like with depression, you have a serotonin deficiency, kind of thing. There's a cause and effect, which it might be true and unrelated, right? True, your serotonin's low. True, you have depression, but it may not be related, or the cause. I mean, it could be in some cases, but the same with back pain. True, you have a herniated disc. True, you have back pain, but it may not be related, right? So he broke away in the late 60s and 70s and started doing studies showing that back pain was actually caused by emotional triggers. And so when we have these dangers, or anger, he said, anger. And so when you're faced with anger, what is our animal nature, our primitive nature, our automatic brain does? It responds to danger by fight or flight. And so by all means necessary. So if there's stress, your body is in this fight or flight mode, and it's going to create things to help flee that stress. And that fleeing that stress may be distracting one from that stress. So we focus on the pain, and thereby we totally ignore all the other aspects of our life. So in autoimmune disease, kind of my working theory is that the body is turning against itself. It's like angry at itself. It's part of that fight or flight. It's attacking itself, and it's working as a distraction from the real issues. And we see a lot in people who have had trauma in their lives. And I remember I had a patient who had severe, debilitating back pain. And only when she went for the psychiatric evaluation before somebody gets a spinal cord stimulator, they have to go through the psychological process, was it revealed that she was sexually abused when she was 13, and she lost a child a year before her back pain started getting, really bad. Nobody talked about that. Nobody, they just said, oh, you have spondylolisthesis, you have a herniated disc, all these things, and you have failed back syndrome because, of course, she had surgery. And nobody addresses, and nor did the psychiatrist or psychologist. They gave her the spinal cord stimulator, keep giving her injections, keep giving her the pills, whatever, and never saying that maybe somehow this is related to the back pain. So I'm sure that, I love that idea that you have, that if you have that, if your body is physically like a wall, a chain, and able to to withstand it, but most of the time it's not, right? I mean,
Well,
it
I think
takes
it's
work.
two things.
Yeah.
First of all, you want your body like a chain, like a strong chain,
Hmm.
everything optimized, digestion functioning like a clock, which there's a lot of science now
Oh, absolutely.
around the biome. I'm sure you know the biome optimizing that, Akkermansia, bifidobacterium, like these kind of things. If you're depleted in them, then you're not really absorbing the nutrition from the food you're eating. And most people, their digestion is upside down. It's candida infested. It's leaky. It's got biofilm, so you're not even absorbing the nutrition from the food you're eating. It's creating havoc. It's poking holes, leaking food particles. So when I think when we say the body attacks itself or the immune system attacks itself, it's not really attacking itself. I don't think it's attacking this biofilm, all these foreign things that are happening in your body that your body can't seem to get rid of. It's just attached. It's living. It's like a parasite living off of you. So I don't think that's what's going on. So it's the strong immune system and strong body, but also you have to be like a judo player with stress. Right. Don't let it hit you straight on. You gotta. It takes a moment to figure out how to live your life like that.
Yeah.
Because I remember as a kid growing up, I would be very, very like things would set me off. A lot.
You're right. In the streets of Moscow.
Yeah, I would get very angry very, very quickly, but so somehow that passed, and I'm much more. You will have a hard time getting me very, very angry.
Yeah,
not easy anymore.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing, and I think I think all of us, because we all have it in us. People who say that that we all have that ability to be aggressive, and I look at that, the fight or flight is the aggression, or the flight is being passive, and passive aggressive is actually a fight response because it is a knife, a dagger, but our higher consciousness, or our mind, is more being assertive, and assertive is very strong, is very powerful, but doesn't have to be like, it doesn't hurt us as much as the aggression, the anger does. Now, the science of human optimization that your company, could you tell us a little bit about that? What you're doing?
Yes, I'd love to. So basically, one of the pieces that was missing for me is over the last 20 years, I would inexplicably gain 20 pounds and then develop some kind of a health problem. So when I first started, I gained 20 pounds and I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. Then, 8-10 years later, I gained 20 pounds. I developed brain fog, chronic fatigue, insomnia, just so many different issues. And then I had to fix that. And then later, during COVID, when my business fell apart, I gained 20 pounds. So I felt like,
right,
you're going through these swings throughout your life, especially after you turn 30. And then you got to run to the doctor who prescribes some medication that adds to the toxic burden. Nobody's addressing the underlying cause. When you go see a doctor, they don't really know you from the patient that came before. They see you for 3 minutes. They do the same protocol regardless of who you are. So I just thought to myself, this is just ridiculous. This just makes no sense to me. And so I said, I'm going to design a health program for my own self, because like going to a doctor, like a medical doctor, generally speaking, it can be very expensive, a functional medicine doctor.
Yeah.
The average person can't afford it. And also they usually will go to see a functional medicine doctor when they tried everything else, and then they show up to the medical doctor and they're already, okay, fine, I'll pay you. And this attitude. So they come up for the initial consultation, they pay $150. They buy $500 worth of supplements, they come back for the follow-up. Okay, nothing, it didn't work.
Right.
It didn't work.
Right.
So I wanted to create a system where you have an ongoing relationship with a practitioner. And I chose nurse practitioners because, first of all, they're very caring, very knowledgeable people. And second of all, they are, they're less expensive to work with than a functional medicine doctor. Mm-hmm. So they work under the direction and training of some of the top functional medicine doctors in the country. So my assistants needed to leave the office.
Yeah, that's fine.
So nurse practitioners, so I have a nurse practitioner that's my personal human optimization practitioner. And so her job is to get to know me from genetics out. So we did my genetics, we did my blood, we did my toxicity levels, we do all these things on a regular basis. And so she knows where I need to be in whatever things I'm dealing with. And she works on the direction of all these top functional medicine doctors who I bring on. We just spoke with Dr. Gladden. He wrote 100 is the new 30. We have all these, Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum, who's spent 40 years studying the gut biome, all the genetics experts, like all these amazing people. So she and her job is to know me like nobody else knows me. And so that on a regular basis, we consult, and she's like, you're a little depleted in this, you're a little bit toxic with that. And we proactively work on all of these things together for the rest of my life. So I think that system is much more conducive, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's a monthly membership fee. And I think most people are heavily invested in the chronic disease that they eventually will develop.
Yeah.
So the average family is spending $30,000 to $40,000 for their, health insurance, just investing into that inevitable health catastrophe. So my thought is, how about you hedge your bet a little bit and maybe offset the possibility that you will never get the health catastrophe in the first place.
Right.
By making sure you got enough vitamin D and stuff,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way the system is structured. It's in the very foundational stages. I'm still setting up the marketing platform.
Okay.
And establishing relationships with all the people and the experts that I want to do this with. And so we're and the book will hopefully be at the forefront of our marketing effort to get this message in front of as many people as possible, that kind of funnel them into our program.
Okay, great. So right now, if one of my listeners or viewers wants to participate with the monthly membership, it's not available yet. Is that correct?
We're taking on clients very slowly.
Okay.
At this point. I have one nurse practitioner that is my head nurse practitioner, and then I have 4 who are in training, and they're all fabulous. They're like super passionate. They're like very wise. They've been around for a while. They know the system doesn't work. They understand that we need to create something different. So they're very very pure of heart, people.
Yes, love it. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. So they can take a look at our website. But you're taking clients. You do clients.
I'm not actually. No, I'm not. Oh. No. Yeah.
Take them all then.
What's that?
I'll take them all. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I'll leave the link. You'll send me all the links that you want, and I'll put that on the description. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it really, I know that it's well care and true health care is just not available. I mean, we have great medicine in this country. If you're really sick and need urgent emergency care, we have the knowledge and the techniques. Surgeries are great. I had a hip replacement surgery due to an injury about let's see, it'll be 6 years. Oh my God, I can't believe 6 years ago in October. And I do CrossFit 3 or 4 days a week. I mean, really intense workouts. And I'm working out with people. I'm in my mid 60s, right? And so there's great technology that's been developed for things that we need for broken bones, for acute heart disease. You want to prevent that. You want to prevent that from happening, and this is the way to do it. But we have to focus on prevention and being, like you said, being proactive. And so I love that. I mean, I knew you were going to put something like this together. I mean, it just was a matter of time. I mean, you had the stuff before COVID, and we were all, locked down and shut down, and I mean, there was, that's a whole other issue that we could talk about, that where things went totally bonkers and wrong, and how, certain ways of dealing with certain illnesses, COVID especially, were prohibited for prevention. I'm just going to tell a brief story that in March of 2020, when the stuff hit the fan initially, we had friends who came down with COVID, 3 friends who came down with COVID. And they asked me, and I had left my private practice. I had turned it over to a younger guy in November 2019. But they, they're friends. They asked me, well, what do you do? And I said, okay, I think you should go on, because what was, available there. What they're recommending is Zithromax and hydrochloroquine. And that's what Anthony Fauci was recommending the last week of March of 2020. They asked him, what would you take if you got COVID? He said hydroxychloroquine. Okay. So that's what I did. If I was in private practice at that time, I mean, I'm so glad I wasn't, because I probably would have lost my license because of the things. And then, when ivermectin was talked about as a horse dewormer. So that was true misinformation. That people talk about misinformation, disinformation. I mean, that was truly mis or disinformation. And ivermectin is freely available now. And so I did and they got better. They got better quickly. And so, but hydroxychloroquine a few weeks later became misinformation, or you be canceled if you said anything like that. So, I'm very careful of what I talk about on the CoachMD podcast, because I'm not yet, my traction is not great yet. So the last thing I want to do is have somebody cancel, what I'm talking about. Everything I'm saying is what happened. That's what happened.
That's not enough.
I mean,
I don't know.
yeah.
You can't just be honest and right.
Right.
You
Yeah.
gotta be like, I don't know. Some things are accepted no matter how wrong they are, and some things are dismissed no matter how right they are. It's just a
Right.
bizarre world. I never experienced this before.
Right. Well, you had I know most of the people I know who originate from Russia, Soviet Union, and those who originate from countries like Venezuela or Cuba have a very strong reaction to what they see happening in our country.
Yeah,
And
except
certainly,
Alexander Mayorkas.
yeah, right.
I don't know what the story is with that guy. It's just a
Yeah.
shock.
Yeah.
It's the
Yes.
from Cuba.
Yeah.
Very, very shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. So, I really appreciate all your knowledge and what you've done. And I've, over the years, enjoyed your meetings, and just how just ahead of the curve you are. And when you talk about outside the box, I was always kind of recognized as a doctor, outside the box. And that when I did the concierge plan in 2002, I was demonized by a lot of my doctors, and they were cheering against me because they were jealous. That's human nature. That's what I call the automatic brain, is a fight response. Envy is a certain fight response against those who you feel have
I would never think this of the doctor community, because in my mind, this is the enlightened class,
right,
that have evolved beyond this petty nonsense. But after all these years, I figured out like crabs in a basket. It's awful.
It is. I mean, look, when you go to a doctor and have this information, you're really excited to share it with the doctor. Oh yeah, and they put you down. It's what I call the one-up trigger. You're one-upping them, so they fight or flee you because you're trying to one-up them, and they want to put you down, and that's a very bad reaction. And I remember when I was talking about the proton pump inhibitors, and my gastroenterologist friends would would, laugh. Oh, what, you want your patients to get esophageal cancer or whatever? I knew they were bad because they're completely cutting off your acid, 100%. So they're allowing, poor digestion, the bad bacteria to overgrow in your gut. And sure enough, later on, the reports of all the stuff that chronic PPI use causes. And when I would smuggle in, when my patients would be in the hospital, I'd have to smuggle in the Saccharomyces, the Fluorostor, so they could take when they're on IV antibiotics because of C. diff. I mean, why is C. diff rampant? Because, we're blasting people with antibiotics and giving them the lactobacillus in the hospital because the Bacid was the only probiotic that they had on formulary. So I had to actually smuggle in or tell their family, go to CVS, get the Fluorostor, bring it in when nobody's watching, give it to your, loved one twice a day, whatever. And, yeah, it's important. It's real stuff.
What's interesting to me, Dr. Charles, is,
yeah.
I mean, you went through the whole medical education. You saw the profits available in doing things the way they taught you. And yet somehow you also are rebellious by nature.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm happily surprised that you held on to your license all these years.
I know, right? Well, you know what? That if God wasn't good to me, this is what I believe, okay? And I was able to get out in November 2019, and I could, it was really, the way that happened was truly, I feel, divinely inspired. The timing of that, I don't know if I would have, that would, because
I can see these were some tumultuous years. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I just couldn't. So what are some of the things that, I can share with the audience too, and I have in the past, and some of the things that I do now as far as supplementation? Is there any that you are for yourself? And everybody's different. And like you said, with the science of human optimization, you want to treat people individually or have people looked at as individuals and tailor certain approaches and interventions that are individualized. But what are some of the things that have worked for you? And I stress worked for you. See, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's my norm, my benchmark. Does it work?
Yeah, what's funny, Dr. Charles? I hear people talking sometimes. It's like, I found this supplement. It's whatever it is. It improves your mitochondria function.
Urolithin A.
And
is that it?
Have this, what is it?
Okay. Urolithin A.
Well, whatever.
Okay, right.
Like you hear people talking,
Yeah.
Oh, really? It helps.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Sleep. Yeah. Where I get it? What is that? What's the name? It's like such a ridiculous thing, because we are all so different. We all have different deficiencies, different toxicity, different genetic makeup, and for us to try to figure out these quick fixes. A friend of mine called the house the other day. He goes, my wife has high cholesterol. He has high cholesterol. He goes, he's speaking to my wife. He goes, I found this
Reddish rice.
Reddish rice. It's supposed to help with the cholesterol. So they're having these kind of weird conversations. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. You gotta like really take a look at the whole body. You got to get to know the body. You got to get to know your body.
Yeah.
You got to have an expert, like you have your financial expert. You got to have your human optimization expert who recommends things that they research for you as somebody that works for you, as opposed to your regular doctor who they're working for the insurance company. They're not working for you. Pharmaceutical industry maybe, but not for you. So there's a bizarre relationship between doctor and client. And I think we have to pry ourselves away. And I'm thinking that I can salvage maybe 1 million people out of the 330 million that live in the United States. It's an optimistic goal. But if I can get them into my program, I'm going to have somebody else working with them to figure out what kind of supplementation they need. So I take certain supplements based on what what my practitioners say I need. And it's always the best. It's high potency, professional lines of one type of thorn I like it's a multi.
Yes.
But I tend to be deficient in vitamin D. vitamin B complex. So I do vitamin B shots with folate, and I have MTHFR gene. So because of that, there has to be that. I take glutathione because, as your body depletes, it's very important. So I do a lot of different things based on what I need.
Yeah.
If I give my protocol to somebody else, it's not what you need.
Right. Now, but you can see when you get your blood work done that it's done something, that
I just did my blood work. I came
doing something.
Dr. Kirk looked at my blood work. Mitchell Kirk is 93. He
Love
wrote
it.
on longevity. He's awesome. He's such a cool dude. He just wrote a testimonial and did a little video.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
He's such a good guy. But he just did my blood work, and everything is great. My testosterone is fantastic. That was another thing. Like my testosterone and estrogen switched. Like my estrogen was high, my testosterone was very low. So I was in my 40s at the time, and organizing these conferences, and I get like really upset all the time, like the most.
Right.
And I couldn't understand why. But if you're hormonal,
right,
upside down like that, you're gonna act funny. So, a lot of people. I can still have conversations and arguments with people today, with my friends. Like, it's diet and exercise. You lower your intake of calories and you up your exercise protocol. Great. But what about the chemistry? Your chemistry is off. If your biome is off, if you're heavy metal toxic, if you have parasites, you can exercise and diet all you want. If your body's chemistry is off, you're never going to get to that place that you want to get. So I think chemistry is crucially important. And the wisdom and access to doctors like you is so priceless. But we just couldn't figure out like how to structure this way of making it work for the individual person. Because 20 years I spent sitting in rooms, listening to doctors, reading their books. Well, I don't want to be a doctor. No, that's not my purpose in life. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to know.
Yeah.
You did that. Amazing. Congratulations. But like, why would I want to make the wheel again? You already have the wheel.
Yeah.
Can't we find a way how to work this way? So I do my thing and you do your thing.
Yeah.
Live our purpose and everybody gets what they want. I think that's logical.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I get back to, results. It's kind of like the doctor you're talking about is 93. Obviously he walks the walk. I mean, he's talking about longevity. Look, you could talk about longevity. I mean, you hear these people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s talking about how they've, with the longevity. But when you have someone who's 93, and talking about longevity,
who's a regular medical doctor. Medical doctors, with all due respect, don't live long.
No, they don't. They don't.
Because they embrace this. You have a symptom, take your medication. They're believers. They're like.
Yeah.
Dr. Erica Schwartz, you know her?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
She's a dynamo. So she wrote a book called Don't Let Your Doctor Kill You. She calls it the medical cult.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, I'm an outsider, so I can't really say that, but I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when I was flirting with this idea of a podcast years ago, this is when you had to pay for these things. I had to pay for internet radio to be on. And it was called Killer Healthcare. And I saw in your book you have a chapter, Killer Healthcare or whatever. And it was for me, if you go to a financial planner, for instance, or a stockbroker, let's say, and they're recommending a stock, are they investing in that stock themselves? You want to know, do they have skin in the game? Are they? Is it something they want to do? If a doctor's recommending you chemotherapy, like an oncologist, is that something they would do? And it's very hard to know that some doctors, like you said, are all in on that, and it is what they would do. And you want to honestly run away from those doctors because they're a little bit biased. You want them to do what's good for you and not for them. So it's, what I do now when I supplement, look, I'm in my mid 60s. So I had some prostate stuff starting. I didn't want to go on Flomax and Avodart and all those medications. I tried Flomax once, And the effect it had on me, I did not like it at all. So I have a regimen now that works for me really well. I mean, it's really well. And
You're
yeah, so
familiar with Sylvie Beljanski. You know who that is, yeah?
yeah, yeah, somewhat, not a lot. Is there gonna
You should really take a peek at that.
yeah. What was it again?
Sylvie Beljanski. It's Natural Source International.
Okay, I will look at that. Yeah, yeah. Maybe
Father,
I'm
Mirko
sorry.
Beljanski, her father, Mirko Beljanski, was a professor at Pasteur University. And so he helped the president of France live much longer because he had this terminal prostate cancer.
Mm.
And he developed this natural protocol.
Oh
He
yeah, I've seen those stuff that you've yes, now yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
50
yeah.
years he spent, and she's been at it for another 20. So this is like 70 years worth of research behind the product line. And from what I understand, it's pretty fantastic. It's like the studies that I've seen and things might be interesting for you too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Send me that information. I'd love to see it. So yeah, Alex, I'm just really, love what you've done in the past, as I said, and I love this idea of science, the science of human optimization, and what you're doing. I'm looking forward to getting, your book when it comes out, and certainly, this is
This is what it's going to look like.
love it, love it. What's it called? Youthful longevity. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We
Living
want
to 100 vibrant, productive, and fulfilling years is your birthright and mandate.
I love that. I love that. That's the kind of mandate I like.
I know.
That's the kind of mandate I'll stand behind.
Yeah.
Not any other mandates. Let me
No. Well, it's ordained by God, so that's we got to abide by that stuff.
That's right. You go, amen. So yeah. But yeah, so thank you for being on the Coach MD podcast, and I could whatever I can do to help you out, and then you gave me a couple names of people who I'm definitely going to contact to have on as guests, which is cool. So thanks again, and for the listeners and viewers, as you know, I'm Dr. Charles Glassman, aka Coach MD, urging you to stay strong in mind, in body, and right here in soul. Bye for now.